Kwibuka 29, remember, unite, renew, and in this particular regard, we as KC2 took the initiative to particularly tap onto the youth, or actually, hit the right spot or the right target of making sure that young people are so much involved in remembering and commemorating activities in general, but also what lessons can be drawn from all that happened, to make sure that we move ahead stronger and better. Allow us to welcome in our studios Serge Rwigamba. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Right. Maybe just talking about the name, if you have something more, you can introduce yourself on.
Well, so my name is Serge Rwigamba. I'm a father, I'm married, I have 2 kids, and I work at the Kigali Genocide Memorial. And I'm happy to be received in the studio and share with you about my thoughts and what it means to be in Rwanda during this kind of period of time. Thank you so much.
Yes, so we give you a warm welcome, and we know it's not an easy time, especially for the people of your age who were here during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We send our condolences, and we are standing with you. We hope you get to be strong and also pass this through 100 days.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so here in the studio today, we're going to be talking about the role of the youth in commemorating, as well as taking a part in all the events that happened to make sure that they know what happened in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, but also get to learn. So as a parent, do you think that there is a role that the youth play to be able to get engaged in the conversations and also everything that happens that has to do with the history that happened?
Absolutely, yes. If you consider the number of the youth in Rwanda, I think the last census has shown that we are 13 million, and the youth particular occupy almost over 70% of the population. That means a lot. If you go back to the history, youth has been always playing a role in all what had happened. I mean, having their footstep in a history. If you look back to from 1895 up to 1994, during the period where the country was facing so much turmoil and hatred, youth has been targeted as a tool to use for, especially for the politicians, to achieve what they had planned. Then also the forces that had liberated this country was almost 100% youth. It was between 12 years age up to 30 something. So that means that youth has been contributing a lot to liberate this country. I draw this from the recent speech by the president when we are talking about the vision of 2050, where our president, His Excellency Paul Kagame, say that we are not a country that is just happy to stay where it is. We are not a population, we are not people who just enjoy to stay in the same stage. So that touches on the youth too. Current youth has to know that they are learning about history, but also they are making history. When we talk about history, we talk about people and we talk about actions. So there's actions that we are facing now based on bad choices of the elders. But then the youth of today, they are becoming elders of tomorrow. So they're also making their own history. So it's simple. We live in a country with the advantage of having a visionary leader, but also a country that has drawn lessons from the past. Those are 2 pillars that the youth can base on to simply build another phase of history, which is good, because what they need is to learn from the past, but knowing that the choices, today we are looking at the elders as people who have maybe made a bad choice. It's easy to blame them. But then it's going to be also easy for the upcoming generation to blame the people who are youth today about their choices. So they need to just take that in their minds.
Absolutely.
That, yeah.
You said it right. It's young people who actually took the first initiative to destroy this country some years back. And it's indeed some other youths who took the great initiative to rebuild the country to what it is today. Something that I usually say happened so fast, considering how the country had been distracted and the way it was rebuilt to see where it is 29 years later. Serge, saying this, why should it be an initiative, or why should it be an itching assignment to a young person to think that today, as we remember the genocide against the Tutsi, it's their role too? Not the role of those who liberated this country, not the role of those who were there before 1994, but mostly those who were there right after. Why should it be the eager and the great assignment for them to take part in commemoration activities, but also to learn and educate themselves about the history of what happened in Rwanda?
The essence of doing what exactly you're asking, especially for the youth, is that we are in a commemoration. It's something which is more like repetitive each and every year, and it's not just commemorating, but it's also a self-reflection as a country to know how far we are to eradicate hatred that eventually led to this tragedy to be committed, and being youth. I mean, by the time when the genocide happened, I was a youth too. I was young enough to not even understanding fully what was happening, but also to face what was happening. So quite the same for the youth today. There is direct effects for the youth about what is happening. But the difference is that now they are not being dragged into something. They are being given a platform for them to decide whether this country will remain in a dark history or if they can participate in changing the course of this history and having a bright future. So simply, I can draw that from what we teach in at the Kigali Genocide Memorial and Peace Education, Peace and Values Education. That is what we call personal responsibilities. It's part of what we teach in schools in this Peace, Values and Education. So youth need to be critical thinker, and they need to also have a personal responsibility. So, and it's obvious for now for them to be fully part of commemorating, because the not honor occasion, but it's a crucial occasion for them to learn from the history. Not, I mean, acting as if they know, but just having a curiosity to exactly know what happened. There is a German scholar who had said that what the history teaches on the people is that actually people have learned nothing from the history. So we shouldn't be like people who haven't learned anything from our history. If we need to build another facet of history, eventually it's something that had started. So what the youth needs is to make sure that the path that the country is directing to will not be diverted in future.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, so as a young person who was there in 1994, what can you tell the people who aren't there, especially the new generation, from your own testimony? Just a short testimony that you can share with us as a person who was there, and then something that you learned as a person from the history that maybe the youth can actually get the inspiration from. As a young person who was there, then you came out of the situation, from your own situation, what you have learned, and even from your own testimony.
Well, so thank you so much. I think this is a crucial question. I was youth by then, and on my personal experience, I lost my family at the middle of my youth age. I was doomed to then draw the future on my own. Because when you talk about genocide, we don't talk about killings, we talk about destruction, I mean, the total destruction. So anywhere that would learn about what life means had been completely destroyed. So myself and the people from my age, we learned to draw our own future without having anyone to teach us to do that. We had, few parents who had survived. I think the statistics have shown that 300,000 people had survived the genocide, and the youth was more than, beyond 300,000. But the youth of then, it was between 250 and 280,000 people who have survived. So from my experience as a youth of that time, if I would simply summarize into, without going through to each and every detail, in spite of experiencing the gruesome acts of your neighbors and everyone, then you start another vision of your life without having a reference. So now we have a youth which has a reference. Either they are lucky because they have parents, but also lucky because they have a country that tries to give them a reference. So that's the only difference. They can simply refer to the reference and move back, while for us, we lack the reference. Even those who are supposed to give a reference, not only they had been killed, but the country was also searching itself. So that's the only difference.
Right. Having 1 million people killed in a very, very short period as 100 days, it's something, it's a tragic of its own that I think has never existed anywhere in the world. I know there are other atrocities that happened, but seeing the sort of what happened in Rwanda, it's something that has never happened anywhere in the history that I was able to read about and learn. What do you think was really the direct role of young people in this super destruction that happened in Rwanda in such a very, very short period of time?
Good question, thank you so much. Actually, that shows you the nature of that hatred. Where, simply if you go back to the history, what the colonial power did was to actually take away the identity. So we lived in a country where people, even so far now, people are still struggling to build the identity. We're a country which is now doing whatever possible to rebuild the identity, because whatever you do, if you don't have an identity, you are not going anywhere. So by the time, as you said, the genocide against the Tutsi was marked as the fastest killing spree that had happened in the last century. So what caused it to be that fast, especially if you look at the youth, is that they simply lacked a way, not a way, but also a space to think. Everyone had to decide for them, and they felt okay with that. Not only they did not have a platform, but they did not show to actually look for one. So they participated heavily. If you look at the percentages, you can see that maybe almost 40% of the people were killed by over 40 to 50%, because Rwanda by then was 7,100,000 people, and 1 person among of people were living in the city. The rest of population were living in the rural areas. And the machete was the most using tool to kill people. So you can imagine this physical force that impacted the genocide, and yet you make it the fastest one. So simply youth acted so fast, energetically, but without brain. Right. They were simply following the path of what their parents had been teaching them, embedded them in. So they simply acted, and they acted so energetically to kill over 1 million of people. So that's a lack of lack of reference, lack of identity, but lack of platform and lack of critical thinking. if I would simply summarize into those words.
Yes, yes. As you have said, I feel like, bad leadership also contributed so much to making sure that these youth would actually inherit or understand what they wanted to say, because it wasn't a one-time thing that was taught to the youth. It was a consistently taught thing to the youth. So I think also bad leadership did contribute in one way or another, and we are thankful as the new generation or as the young people in the country to have the good leadership that we have. So continuing with the youth topic that we were speaking about, as a survivor who survived the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and as a parent, you told us you have 2 children. We want to know if parents also, especially the survivors, because most of the youth or all the youth here in the country have parents who are survivors, and they're products of the parents who survived the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So what is the role of the survivors? What is the role of the parents to the new generation in making sure that they have this right information by them giving their testimony? Do you think that these survivors give their testimony enough to the young generation to know what they went through and also get the information, the right information from the first hand?
Well, so it's a good question. Where I work, we are actually noticing that sort of problem. Let's call it a challenge, because it's hard to deliver your experience. There's some of unspeakable experience that people have got through, which is really very hard for the parents to teach, to deliver them. Not even teaching, but it's more like sharing.
Yes.
We constantly have parents who just turn up to the place where I work and they request someone, like a guide or anyone, to simply tell the children what she can't tell. And it does make sense, because we are in a post-genocide society. It's a generation that have committed genocide, generation that have survived genocide is still alive. It has been 29 years now.
Yeah.
So it's so difficult for the parents. There are some, depending on how strong they are, or depending on what they have endured by the time, who can deliver. But in spite of that, there is a need that you can't suppress, that you can't ignore as a parents.
Right.
That you have to. It's a must. You have to. But simply like which way you can do it. But you have. It's a must for the parents to do that. So there are some of platforms that people need to adapt. I'm not simply doing a publication, but I have a friend who wrote a book about, because he's quite almost at my age. He wrote a book about how parents can adapt in this journey to teach, to deliver the messages. But first of all, it's a must. What the country needs is teach them how you do that, because you have to do that.
So how do you think the parents should do that?
Well, so first it's to come and face their history. You can't, it's hard, but this is an honorable way. Go to the memorial, trying to train yourself, actually deliver the little that you have. In the minds of children, they simply pick pieces of what they heard from you, of what they heard from, and they can constitute actually the whole thing. Simply, whatever you have, even if it's small, but just exercise yourself to deliver it, to talk about it. Go maybe visiting where your own ones are buried. Try to draw, because people, young people, they live with a curiosity. Try them, bring them over, bring them to the memorial sites, and then from that history, also try to be part of it. Just, let's call it, throw a little piece of what you know, of what you went through. And maybe as the time goes on, because it's more like a practice that you do, and as you do it over and over again, you come up to finally deliver something tangible that your children can learn. But it's just a small personal practice that you can do for at least showing something. Don't simply act as if someone else will have to do it because there is a national genocide history, but you have personal history.
Yeah.
And you need to deliver it. And the second is also to not divert from where the country is heading. I might feel so sad and have so much wounds, but does not mean that I have to divert, to pass behind the truth. The truth in this country is that we need to live together in the same country. The truth in this country is that we have a good leadership that's building a beautiful future for everyone.
Right.
So you may say simply, let me be practical, that in spite of what I went through, but I don't blame people as people. I blame leadership. I've lost this and this, I went through this, but that was caused by the leadership, not for the people. Because if you start putting a finger on the people, you create some set of hatred towards your kids, and it's not helping them at all. Yeah.
Right. Allow me to pick it from where it just stopped as we conclude. Today, it's so surprising and very sad to see that there are young people, some of whom were born after the genocide against the Tutsi, who are in one way or another spreading a genocide ideology. And, you know, they're simply drawing lessons, bad lessons from their past in making sure that they spread the genocide against the Tutsi. Why do you think is the main trigger of this, and how can we approach it to make sure that we change the narrative and can't see, because it's so weird and you know, very sad to see that a post-genocide generation person is the one spreading the genocide ideology, which actually brought this country to total destruction. How do we approach this problem, which is there? It's the sad reality, but this problem is there. We can see it everywhere, social media, you know, or see different people come up to do different activities that show that they're actually ideological driven. So how do we approach this particular problem, and in general, what's your call to young people?
Well, we first of all should not be surprised about people denying genocide. It's the last stage of it, and it happened for all post-genocide societies. People deny. It's either very hard for them to assume their mistake, either it's a way to simply throw what they did to someone else for them to feel, yes, to, you know, to feel a little better, because in the whole world, everyone, genocide is a very sensitive matter. That's why you can see people, without having enough knowledge about what genocide is, they try to apply it in all sort of circumstances. Simply because it's so sensitive and they can't bear with it. So youth, I mean, we have parents who can't bear, who can't assume their responsibilities, and who prefer to blame and to deny, and then it's so shameful for them to tell the truth to their own children, and then they prefer to simply split lies, as you're saying,
right,
so that their children will not look at them as
guilty.
As guilty. So we should not be surprised about it. Most of the people who have committed unimaginable with the extreme cruelty, the atrocities of genocide, those who were able, those who are capable, were able to free this country and go abroad, and they built a very strong network of simply denying. So we should not be surprised about it, because this is what they're supposed to do if they don't want to change. But then for us, we need to approach these ones, we need to approach these youth with love. We need to show what Rwanda is, which is hospitable, welcoming country. We simply need them not to act angrily when they display these lies, because they were brainwashed. So we need simply to tell them the truth, to show them love, to simply invite them to come be part of this journey. We need to simply show them that there is still chances to learn and decide for their own.
Right.
If you have this, if you can, based on the examples that the country is doing for now. We have a leadership which even invite the children of those perpetrators to come back here, simply look by themselves. Recently, the former Minister of Defense, General Kabarebe, had given some of the examples of how he was actually paying school fees for one of the former Rwandan armed force leaders, their children who had stayed back to Rwanda, who had no means, who had no tuition fees, but yet he was paying the school fees for these children for them to continue. And that's actually triggered them, the wife of one of that person, to go in a bush in Congo and actually repatriate some of the people, including her husband. Actually, this is a step that we need to also follow. We need to step up and show love and simply invite them to come here and be witnesses of what is happening.
Yeah.
Right.
One last question that I have before we can conclude this session is, as the person in your line of work, as the person who works at the memorial site, you all know the numbers of the youth that come in who are eager to learn the history. If you can please share with us, let us know how much the youth are contributing. If it's great, can they go forward? How can they do it? If it's not great, what is the message that you can give them today?
Well, so they're most welcome to what the country is passing through, because they're part of it. They can't deny it. They don't have any other option apart from, being part of it. The work of peace and peace and values and education that the memorial has started in, as you are referring to it, back to 2008. Now we're able to train over 2.5 million people. And the youth are largely part of it. And what we want to teach or what we deliver is peace.
Right.
And we need them to be peaceful inside themselves and creating a very peaceful atmosphere. So my simple message is that they're welcome to be part of this journey, and we welcome them to live peacefully so they can also build peace in the future, because they are youth today, but they're going to be elder of tomorrow.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming through. And again, let's remember, unite and renew.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We still have a lot as we proceed with our show, and one of the things, of course, that help us in this commemoration period and mending the broken hearts is, some songs related to the history, but also giving the messages of strength. Let's go have one, and I'll be right back.